I had been with Wolfbridge Industries for almost 8 years. 8 years of loyalty, late nights, and constant striving to make the company a success. I started out as a sales associate, barely making ends meet. Now, I was the senior regional director, in charge of securing major deals in the Western region. I had built relationships with clients that were worth millions of dollars, and my numbers spoke for themselves. Then came Marcus Barnes, the CEO. He was ambitious, young, and had a reputation for shaking things up. I never thought much of him at first, but lately, I'd been hearing rumors, whispers around the office about new changes, restructuring, they called it. I didn't think it would affect me. I had too much influence, too many clients that depended on me. But that day, everything changed. I walked into the conference room where Marcus was sitting, a smile on his face. He was always smiling, a charming, polished smile that I had learned to be wary of. I took a seat across from him, sensing that something was off. "Jill," he said, leaning back in his chair, "I'm afraid your time with the company has come to an end." It was as if the air had been sucked out of the room. I stared at him, trying to comprehend what I was hearing. "You're kidding, right?" I asked, the disbelief in my voice unmistakable. "No, Jill, we're moving in a different direction. I've decided to make a few cuts and restructure the sales team. The board feels that we need to freshen things up. I'm sorry, but your position is being eliminated." "Just like that?" I asked, my voice starting to crack, though I was doing my best to keep calm. I had worked for this company for nearly a decade, and now in one sentence, it was all gone. Marcus's expression remained unchanged. Yes, just like that. I sat there trying to wrap my head around it. All the projects I'd been working on, the clients I had secured, all of it meant nothing. To Marcus, I was just a number on a spreadsheet, easily replaceable. I tried to hold it together, but I could feel the sting of betrayal creeping in. "Do I get any severance?" I managed to ask, though it sounded weak even to my ears. "I'm afraid not. You can leave today, Jill. HR will have your final paycheck ready." Marcus's words were as cold as the marble floor beneath my feet. As I walked out of his office, the weight of it all hit me. I was walking out the same way I had walked in 8 years ago, with nothing but a few personal items in my hands. But now, everything felt different. I wasn't just walking away from my office. I was walking away from a career I had built from scratch. As I reached the elevator, I saw my colleagues looking at me through the glass walls, their expressions a mix of pity and curiosity. I had become just another casualty of Marcus's vision for the company. The door closed behind me, and I felt my phone buzz in my pocket. A message from Sarah, my longtime assistant. "I'm so sorry, Jill," I heard. "Let me know if you need anything." I smiled weakly and typed back a response. "Thanks, Sarah. I'll be fine." But I didn't know if I'd ever be fine again. Not after this. The morning after the termination felt unreal. I had packed my desk, said goodbye to the familiar faces in the office, and walked out of the building like a ghost. The finality of it all was still sinking in. As I drove home, my mind raced, processing everything. The loss, the anger, the humiliation. Everything was tangled together, but it wasn't just about losing my job. It was about how it had happened. A dismissal, a last-minute decision made by a man who knew nothing about the company he had inherited, and even less about the value of the people who built it. When I walked through the door of my apartment, the first thing I did was sit on the couch, still holding the termination papers in my hands. The soft hum of the city outside my window did nothing to calm the storm inside me. I had spent 9 years at Wolfbridge, working my way from an entry-level contract negotiator to senior sales executive. And for what? To be discarded like yesterday's trash by a 28-year-old who had no real idea of what it took to run this business? I looked around the living room at the sleek, minimalist furniture, the memories of business deals, late-night phone calls, and client meetings scattered across every inch of the place. The life I had built was tied to the success of Wolfbridge, or so I thought. I didn't want to feel sorry for myself. That wasn't my style. I was a survivor, and I had faced much tougher challenges in my career. What I needed was a plan, a clear, focused plan. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of something else. The question was, what? I grabbed my phone and called Sarah. She had always been my right-hand woman at Wolfbridge, and she had a gut feeling that things weren't going well for me the moment Marcus took over. "Hey, Sarah, I'm so sorry. I don't know what to say. I can't believe Brad did this to you." "It's fine, Sarah," I said, sitting down at my desk. "It's just that everything happened so fast. It's almost like he had it planned from the beginning." Sarah hesitated. "What do you mean?" "Brad, he's been gunning for me since he took over. I've seen the signs for months. First, he started questioning my decisions in meetings, dismissing my opinions. Then he started taking credit for deals that I worked on. And now this. He just decided to cut me loose after all the hard work I've put in." "Are you going to fight it?" Sarah asked. I paused, glancing at the papers on my desk. "Not the way you're thinking. I'm not going to beg them to reconsider. I've got a plan." "Are you serious? What are you going to do?" she asked, sounding intrigued. "I've been thinking about it all night. I've already been in touch with a lawyer. I'm going to take a different approach. I'm not going to sit around and sulk. Instead, I'm going to take what's rightfully mine. Marcus may have fired me, but he doesn't know who he's dealing with." The following weeks felt like a blur, a combination of excitement, uncertainty, and determination. I had made the decision to go forward with my consulting business, and the gears were now turning. After everything I'd been through with Veltrix, this was my moment to redefine not just my career, but myself. I had already proven my worth in the corporate world. Now it was time to carve out my place in this new, uncharted territory. As the days passed, the initial thrill of freedom started to give way to the pressure of execution. I wasn't just another consultant. I was someone who had built a reputation on delivering results. And now I had to maintain that standard on my own. With no corporate backing or an established infrastructure, I had to work smarter, harder, and faster. I knew I needed to get a client, and not just any client, but one that would make a statement. The bigger the name, the more credibility I'd gain. I'd already been in touch with Jonah Freeman from Horizon Innovations, but I wanted more than just a handshake deal. I wanted something solid, a long-term partnership that would not only pay the bills, but prove that I could take charge. I spent hours drafting emails and refining my pitch. Every word had to be perfect. I wasn't selling products or services. I was selling trust. I was selling my expertise. The question was, could I convince the right people that I could solve the problems they'd been battling in their industries? One afternoon, as I sat at my new home office desk, an old oak desk that used to belong to my mother, the one she'd used when she ran her own small accounting firm, I received a call from an old colleague. She had heard about my recent move and wanted to catch up. I knew her as someone I'd worked with at Dennis Materials. And though she hadn't been in my inner circle, we'd always had mutual respect. Her name was Susan Marks, and she was the CFO of a mid-sized tech company called Bedford Technologies. We had shared a few clients over the years and had crossed paths often in the business community. "I've heard you've left Veltrix, and I wanted to say congrats on taking the leap. It's been a long time coming, don't you think?" Susan said, her voice warm, but with an undertone of curiosity. "Thanks, Susan. It definitely feels like the right time," I replied, trying to sound as confident as I felt. The reality was, I was still trying to convince myself that everything would work out. She continued, we've been struggling with a few internal issues here at Bedford. Our contracts and compliance have been a mess for a while, and I heard you were the go-to person for that kind of thing when you were at Veltrix. Would you be interested in helping us out? My pulse quickened. I had barely started and already there was an opportunity. This wasn't just a small ask. This was a serious issue for a company that had been struggling. I'd be happy to take a look, Susan. Why don't you send me the details? By the end of the week, I had a clear picture of what Bedford needed. They were going through a major expansion and needed to overhaul their contract processes to handle the increased volume. They had been underutilizing their legal and compliance teams, and that's where I could step in. The opportunity was exactly the kind of challenge I had been hoping for, helping a company from the inside out, creating a system that not only worked, but improved efficiencies across the board. That Friday, I made a call to Leonard Phillips, an old contact of mine who had worked as a business consultant for years and had helped companies like Horizon streamline operations. Leonard, I've got a situation, I said, laying out the details of the Bedford deal. I need someone who knows the ropes when it comes to tech businesses, especially in navigating these complex contracts. He was intrigued, as I had hoped. He said, I've got a few connections who can help. Let's meet next week and I'll line it up. You won't be alone in this. With Leonard's expertise on board, things were looking brighter. I started formulating a plan for Bedford Technologies. The contract renewal cycle was key, but they were also looking to expand internationally. That was the aspect I focused on first, setting up legal frameworks to ensure they didn't miss out on global opportunities. At the same time, I made sure to keep in touch with Jonah. Horizon Innovations was still a huge win for me, but the longer I waited to formalize my role, the more I realized the true value of my relationship with him. He had already made a significant commitment by offering me a long-term partnership, and I knew that once the ink was dry, Horizon would become one of my most important clients. Cassandra, I know I don't have to tell you this, but make sure this proposal stands out. We've worked with some big players, but we've never had someone with your depth of experience. Don't worry, Jonah, I'd said with a grin. It will be more than just a proposal. It'll be a strategic move that'll save you time and money in the long run. I'll handle the heavy lifting, and you can focus on growing your business. By the end of the month, I had secured 3 more small clients, each of them solid companies that needed help with contracts, regulatory compliance, and streamlining operations. Each new client served as a stepping stone toward something larger, more ambitious. The goal wasn't just to stay afloat, it was to thrive and outshine my competition, particularly the companies that had once deemed me replaceable. As the sun set over my new office, now a much more comfortable space than the one I'd had at Veltrix, I felt a quiet sense of pride. I was doing it. I was building this business from scratch, and it was working. But the true breakthrough came when I received a call from Gregory Thompson, the CEO of Horizon Innovations. His voice was calm, but I could hear the tension beneath the surface. Cassandra, we've gone through the proposal you sent. We're ready to move forward. And I'd like you to come on board full-time, not just as a consultant, but as part of the Horizon team. I leaned back in my chair, my heart racing. I think that can be arranged, I replied, finally feeling the weight of all the hard work paying off. The success of securing multiple clients felt like a well-deserved breath of fresh air. But as much as I tried to immerse myself in this new chapter, one looming question kept popping up. What's next? For every deal I closed, for every strategy I crafted, the satisfaction was always followed by a pang of uncertainty. While the money was coming in, my mind was still preoccupied with the mess left behind at Veltrix. The sudden exit, the quiet dismissal, and Brad's reckless leadership. How could I not be affected by it? Wasn't that part of what had driven me to succeed at all costs? But that wasn't the focus anymore. It couldn't be. Instead, I set my sights on stabilizing my new consulting business and gaining a firmer foothold in the industry. I'd always been a player in the game, but now I needed to redefine my own role. no longer just the problem solver in the background, but the driving force of change. The next call I made was to my new assistant, Megan. She was bright, resourceful, and hungry for opportunities. I needed someone to help with the growing workload, and Megan was the perfect choice. I had been hesitant at first to bring someone on, fearing it would take away from the essence of what I had built so far. But as I quickly realized, I couldn't continue to do it all alone. The demand was growing, and I had to scale. "Hi, Megan. How are you?" I asked when she picked up. "I'm doing great, Cassandra. Excited to get started," she replied with a hint of enthusiasm. "I'm glad to hear that. Listen, I need your help setting up a few meetings with clients next week. We're going to focus on streamlining contract management for a few of the larger clients, and I need to make sure we have everything organized," I said, pulling up my calendar. "Got it. Anything else you need?" "Also, we're going to revisit the Horizon proposal. I have a feeling Jonah might want to adjust a few terms, and I want to be ahead of that conversation," I said, reviewing some notes from our last call. "It's time to solidify our long-term partnership." After a few more logistics details, I hung up, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. It was no longer just about surviving the corporate world. Now I was creating the future, not just for myself, but for the people I was working with. The transformation was real. The following week, I was deep into meetings and strategizing with my clients when a familiar number flashed on my phone screen. Jonah Freeman, the CEO of Horizon Innovations. My pulse quickened. It was time to make it official. "Cassandra, I hope I'm not interrupting anything important," Jonah said, his voice calm but with an undercurrent of urgency. "No, of course not. What's up?" I replied, trying to keep my tone even. "I've had a chance to go through the fine print of our deal, and I think we need to sit down again. I want to make sure we're on the same page for the long term." My heart skipped a beat. A part of me had been holding my breath for this moment. Jonah had been upfront about wanting to keep the terms clear from the beginning, and now it seemed was the time to finalize things. "I agree. I've been thinking the same thing," I said. "What works for you?" "How about Thursday afternoon? I'll have some time after our internal meetings. We'll discuss the deal, but I also want to talk about how we can grow this partnership further." "Sounds great. I'll see you then." As I hung up the phone, I felt a mix of excitement and a hint of nerves. This wasn't just about a deal anymore. Horizon Innovations wasn't just another client. It had become something bigger. An opportunity to prove that my value wasn't in my ability to sell products or services, but in the partnerships I could build. Jonah wasn't just an influential client. He was the key to my next step. This meeting could solidify my place at the forefront of the industry. The stakes had never been higher. The rest of the day passed in a blur of preparations. Megan was a huge help, organizing my notes, pulling up historical data on Horizon's needs, and ensuring that everything was in place for the Thursday meeting. She had been with me for a few weeks now, and I could already see her potential. I was building something lasting here, and I needed the right people around me to make it happen. Thursday afternoon came faster than I expected. I arrived at the sleek Horizon office, the polished glass building standing as a testament to the company's rapid growth and ambition. As I entered the lobby, the familiar faces of the team greeted me. There was an energy in the air, an undercurrent of optimism that seemed to follow Jonah wherever he went. When he greeted me at the door to his office, I could see the same ambition in his eyes that had driven me to make the decisions I had over the past few weeks. It was one of the things I admired most about him, his ability to drive progress while making his team feel invested in that progress. "Cassandra, glad you could make it," Jonah said with a smile. "Let's dive right in." We sat down and the meeting began. Jonah laid out his vision for the future of Horizon Innovations, highlighting his desire to integrate cutting-edge technology and data-driven solutions. But as we talked, I realized this wasn't just a typical business conversation. Jonah wanted more than just a contract review. He wanted to make sure that we, as partners, could chart the course for the next phase of the company's success. I know this partnership is crucial for Horizon, Cassandra, but I also need to know that we're aligned long-term. You're not just a consultant to me. You're someone who understands the core of this business." His words were sincere, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a shift in my thinking. This wasn't just about securing deals. It was about shaping the future. "Jonah, I'm committed to this partnership, and I'm not going anywhere. I want to see Horizon grow as much as you do, and I'm ready to help make that happen." The next few hours were filled with discussions about expanding into new markets, optimizing existing client relationships, and crafting a strategy to ensure Horizon would stay ahead of the competition. We didn't just talk about business. We talked about vision. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't truly understood before. I wasn't just selling products or services anymore. I was selling a vision. My vision. Our vision. By the end of the meeting, Jonah had made his decision. "Cassandra, you've proven your value over and over again. I want you to take this project and lead the charge. Consider this your official invitation to join us full-time. We need someone like you here, not just for your expertise, but for your ability to think beyond the numbers." My heart raced with excitement. It wasn't just about the money, the contracts, or the commission anymore. It was about what I could build, what we could build. And for the first time in years, I wasn't just a player in the game. I was setting the pace. As I left Horizon Innovations that day, my phone buzzed with another message. It was from my lawyer. "The contract with Westlake is officially terminated. Brad's team has received the update. You're clear to proceed." This was it. This was my moment. The days after the meeting with Jonah passed in a whirlwind. I couldn't shake the feeling of transformation that had begun to take root in me. It was more than just closing the deal or proving my worth. This was a new chapter, one where I wasn't simply reacting to the opportunities that came my way, but actively shaping the direction of my career and my future. The transition from Veltrix to Crystalline had been smoother than expected, despite the challenges that came with such a drastic change. Crystalline's headquarters were in a modern glass building on the edge of downtown Plano, and every corner of the space buzzed with the energy of a growing tech company. The team was young, enthusiastic, and driven. There was no room for mediocrity here, and I loved it. Jonah had made good on his promise to not only bring me into the fold, but also to put my skills to use in a way that I had never experienced before. Within the first few weeks, I was involved in high-level strategic meetings with the company's engineering, marketing, and client management teams. We discussed everything from optimizing existing product lines to expanding into new markets. I wasn't just sitting back and offering advice. I was in the trenches, actively contributing to every decision. But the real turning point came one Friday afternoon, exactly 4 weeks after I had joined Crystalline. I sat across from Jonah in his sleek, minimalist office, looking at the proposal I had put together for a new partnership with a large retail chain. We'd been preparing for this pitch for weeks, meticulously researching the chain's needs and crafting a solution that would leverage Crystalline's technology to optimize their supply chain. It was a big deal, and if we secured it, it would mark the beginning of something much larger. "So, you're confident that the product lines we're offering are exactly what they're looking for?" Jonah asked, his tone serious but thoughtful. "Absolutely," I replied, without hesitation, glancing over the projections on the screen. "Our supply chain optimization solution is exactly what they need to reduce costs and improve efficiency. Plus, with the added customization we're offering, it's clear we're positioning ourselves as their long-term partner, not just a vendor." Jonah studied the proposal for a moment, his brow furrowing slightly. "There's just one thing," he said, leaning forward. "We've got a potential issue with the timeline. They're asking for faster delivery, and I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. I need your help here. How can we make this happen?" My heart skipped a beat, but I stayed calm. The timeline was tight, but not impossible. In the world of sales, speed was often just as important as quality. I had managed much tighter deadlines before. I was ready for this challenge.
I've already looked at the production timeline, I said confidently. I think we can meet their deadline by prioritizing key deliverables and leveraging our existing resources more efficiently. We might need to work overtime on certain parts of the project, but it's doable. Jonah's eyes lit up, impressed by my quick thinking. You've got a plan for everything, don't you? Comes with the territory, I replied with a smile. We'll need to make sure the entire team is aligned, but I have full confidence we can hit that target. I'll work with our project managers to coordinate the schedule and make sure we're all on the same page. Jonah leaned back in his chair, clearly satisfied. All right, Cassandra, I trust you. Let's move forward. I'll set up the meeting for next week. I walked out of Jonah's office feeling a rush of accomplishment. Not only had I solved the problem that was keeping us from securing the deal, but I had also shown Jonah and myself that I could handle pressure, think on my feet, and provide solutions that others might have missed. This was why he had brought me on, and I wasn't going to let him down. The next week passed in a blur as my team and I worked tirelessly to finalize the proposal. We made a few last-minute adjustments and then presented it to the retail chain's procurement team. Jonah and I stood at the front of the conference room alongside our product managers and engineers, ready to sell our solution. As I watched the client's leadership team nodding in agreement during the presentation, I knew we had nailed it. The solution we were offering wasn't just a quick fix, it was a long-term strategy that would revolutionize the way the retail chain managed its inventory. The solution was scalable, adaptable, and most importantly, it was exactly what they needed to stay competitive in an ever-evolving market. When the meeting ended, Jonah turned to me with a satisfied grin. "Well done, we've got the deal," he said, extending his hand. "This is huge for us, Cassandra. You've just helped us land one of the biggest clients we've ever had." I shook his hand, a sense of pride swelling in my chest. This was what I had worked for. It wasn't just about closing deals, it was about becoming part of something bigger, something that had the potential to change the game. Later that evening, as I was preparing to head home, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "How was your day, sweetheart? I've been thinking about you." I paused, feeling a wave of gratitude. It wasn't just the business accomplishments that mattered, it was the people who had supported me through thick and thin. I smiled as I typed back, "It went well. Big news soon. I'll tell you everything over dinner tomorrow." As I closed my laptop and headed for the door, I realized how much had changed in such a short time. When I had been let go from Veltrix, I had felt like the rug had been ripped out from under me. But now, just a few weeks later, I had built something even better. I had a new team, a new project, and a new sense of purpose. I wasn't just a survivor of corporate games. I was thriving. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure. I was no longer just waiting for the next opportunity to come along. I was making my own path, and nothing, not even betrayal or setback, could take that away from me.
The days following the Horizon deal were a blur. My life at Crystalline had quickly gained momentum. With every new client, every new project, I felt more and more at home in my role. Jonah and I had a strong working relationship built on mutual respect, and I was growing into a leadership role within the company. My team was strong, motivated, and eager to prove that we could deliver even greater results. It felt good. It felt like I was finally where I was meant to be. But as the weeks passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that the old wounds were still there. I'd lost a lot at Veltrix, more than just a job. My dignity had been bruised, and my trust in the corporate world had been shattered. It wasn't just Brad's actions that hurt. It was the realization that I had been working for a company that valued profit over people, that discarded experience for the sake of a quick buck. Still, I pushed those thoughts aside. I couldn't afford to dwell on the past, not now. The future was bright, and I had work to do. As I sat at my desk one Tuesday morning, reviewing a new contract proposal, my phone buzzed with a text from Jonah. "Morning, Cassandra. Got a second? Need your input on something." I quickly responded, "Of course, heading over now." I grabbed my tablet, tossed it into my bag, and made my way to Jonah's office. I was looking forward to the discussion. It wasn't often that I got to be involved in the high-level strategy meetings like this one. As I walked into his office, I found him poring over some documents. "Morning," he greeted me with a smile. "I want you to take a look at this and give me your thoughts."
He handed me a proposal for a new project that we were pitching to a major retail chain. The client was looking for an end-to-end supply chain solution, and the contract would be worth millions if we could win it. I scanned the proposal, noting the sections that needed a bit more refinement. "I think we need to adjust the pricing structure here," I said, pointing to a section of the document. "We're positioning ourselves as a premium provider, but the pricing doesn't reflect that." Jonah nodded. "Exactly what I was thinking. We can't compromise on quality, but we also don't want to price ourselves out of the market." As we continued to discuss the proposal, I felt that familiar sense of excitement in my chest. This was what I had always wanted to do: work on big projects, solve problems, and bring value to clients. It wasn't just about making money. It was about creating something meaningful. After an hour of intense discussion, Jonah looked up from the proposal and gave me a thoughtful look. "Cassandra, I need to ask you something," his tone more serious than usual. "How are you feeling about your role here?" I was taken aback by the question. I'd always felt like I had a solid footing at Crystalline, but I hadn't expected this conversation. "I'm happy, Jonah, really," I replied. "The team is great, the projects are challenging, and I feel like we're making real progress." Jonah smiled, but there was a note of concern in his eyes. "That's good to hear, but I've been thinking, we've got some big things coming up, and I need someone who can step into a more senior leadership role. I know you've been with us for a while now, but I wanted to ask, would you be interested in taking on more responsibility?" I sat back in my chair, absorbing his words. It was a huge offer. A senior leadership role? I hadn't expected this so soon. I'd only been with Crystalline for a few months, and yet Jonah seemed to think I was ready for more. "Are you serious?" I asked, unable to hide my surprise. "You want me to—" "Yes," he said, his voice firm. "I've proven yourself time and again, and I think you're the right person for the job. I want you to lead our next big project, and I want you to start taking a more active role in strategic decisions. You'll have more autonomy, more control over our direction." I didn't even hesitate. "I'm in." Jonah's smile widened. "I knew I could count on you." That afternoon, I met with Jonah and the rest of the executive team to discuss the next steps. I would be leading our most ambitious project to date, a new partnership with an international client that could expand Crystalline's market reach. The project was huge, and the pressure was on. But for the first time in my career, I felt like I had the experience and the support to succeed. This was my moment. Over the next few weeks, I dove into the project, managing client relationships, overseeing negotiations, and strategizing with the team. I worked late nights and early mornings, making sure everything was on track. It wasn't easy, but I thrived on the challenge. This was what I had been building toward my entire career, an opportunity to prove that I was more than just a sales executive. I was a leader. The project moved forward at a rapid pace, and within 2 months, we secured the contract. The client was thrilled with our solution, and Crystalline's reputation as an industry leader grew exponentially. As the project took off, I realized that this was only the beginning. The road ahead was full of opportunities, and I was determined to make the most of them. But despite my success, there was a nagging thought that lingered at the back of my mind. What had Brad learned from all of this? Weeks later, I received a call from a familiar number. It was Brad. "Hey, Cassandra," he said, his voice surprisingly calm. "I know we haven't talked in a while, but I wanted to reach out." I wasn't sure how to respond. This was the same man who had fired me without a second thought, and now he wanted to talk? "What is it, Brad?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. "I just wanted to apologize," he said, surprising me. "I was wrong to fire you. I didn't fully understand the value you brought to Dennis Materials, and I see that now. I'm sorry for the way I handled things." I was silent for a moment, processing his words. Was this genuine, or was he just trying to salvage what little was left of his reputation? "Thanks for the apology," I replied finally, "but I've moved on, and I'm doing just fine without you." Brad seemed to accept that, and we ended the conversation amicably. I didn't need his apology or approval anymore. I had already proven to myself and to everyone around me that I could succeed on my own terms. Months later, as I sat in my office at Crystalline, looking out over the city, I couldn't help but reflect on how far I'd come. From the painful dismissal at Veltrix to leading major projects and earning the respect of my colleagues, I had truly found my place. And as for Brad, well, he had his own lessons to learn, but I wasn't concerned with him anymore. I was focused on the future, my future.